She said she didn't sign up for this. And then emptied our entire savings the same day I got my cancer diagnosis. I didn't fight. I just opened a beer and started the quietest revenge she'd never see coming. I didn't sign up for this. That was all the message said. 5 words, delivered beneath a screenshot of our empty joint account. My name is Cole Turner. I'm 32 years old, lead mechanic at Wilson's Auto in Spokane, Washington. 4 hours earlier, I had been sitting in a beige doctor's office with flickering fluorescent lights and too many brochures on the wall, hearing words that pulled the floor out from under me. Lymphoma, stage 2, treatable but aggressive. The oncologist's voice was calm, practiced, too smooth for the news he was delivering. Treatment options, chemo cycles, survival rates. His mouth kept moving, but I stopped listening somewhere around the phrase, long road ahead. I walked out of the building like I'd just stepped off a roof and hadn't hit the ground yet. The pavement under my boots didn't feel real. The sun was too bright. I sat in my truck with the door open, key untouched in the ignition, and stared at my hands. They were shaking. Not from fear, not yet, but from the sheer weight of what I knew was coming. I called Rachel from the parking lot, my wife, told her we needed to talk, said I'd be home in 30. She was quiet for a second. Then, "I've got errands, I'll be back later." I said, "All right." Didn't push. I knew her tone. We'd been together long enough to recognize when she didn't want to be part of something. I drove home in silence, no music, no thoughts, just the sound of the engine and the echo of Long Road Ahead playing in my head like static. When I opened the front door, the first thing I noticed was the closet, half empty, a suitcase missing. Then our wedding photo was gone from the nightstand in the hallway. I walked through the house like a man checking for damage after a storm, but knowing exactly where the roof had collapsed. Then my phone buzzed, one text. No greeting, no explanation. Just those 5 words. I stared at the screen until it blurred. Then I typed back, "Take care." That was it. No begging, no blame, no fight. I didn't have the energy to ask for reasons. I just walked out to the back deck, opened a beer from the garage fridge, and sat down in the fading light. The sunset that night was beautiful. One of those watercolor ones we used to watch together, barefoot on the deck, her head on my shoulder. Now she was gone. So was the $38,000 0 cents we'd saved over 5 years. Money for emergencies, future kids, new tires, the someday fund. She took it all. Left a text, called it quits. The cancer I could face, that much I believed. I knew how to fight things I could see, could measure, could punch with a wrench if I had to. But betrayal? Betrayal hit different. It was quiet, surgical, like someone taking apart your life with gloved hands and no expression. I didn't cry, didn't scream, just sat there and let it settle around me like dust in a garage that hadn't seen sunlight in weeks. Mike from next door walked by an hour later. He stopped by the fence, squinting at me. "Everything all right?" he asked. "Saw Rachel take off earlier, car packed up." "Got some health news," I said without turning my head. "She didn't take it well." Mike nodded. Didn't push. "Let me know if you need anything. Nora makes a mean casserole." "Appreciate it." When he left, I went back inside and pulled the manila folder from the kitchen drawer, the one Uncle Walter gave me last month. He used to be an estate planner, retired now, but sharp as ever. When Grandpa passed in February, Walter had helped me process the paperwork for the land he left me up north. Nothing fancy, just a wooded plot near Sandpoint, Idaho. "Everyone needs their affairs in order," Walter had said, "especially when you're married. Protect each other." I thought I was protecting her. I'd updated my will, listed her as co-owner on the '69 Mustang I'd been restoring since we got engaged, though I never filed the DMV paperwork. I'd even opened a secondary account for the land sale when it finalized. Quiet steps. Not because I expected anything to go wrong, just because that's what men like me do. We prepare. We tighten bolts no one will ever see, just to sleep better. Funny how things work out. I picked up my phone, called Walter. When he answered, I said, "Remember that conversation we had about estate planning?" "Of course," he said slowly. "Everything okay, Cole?" "No," I said, "but it will be." I met Rachel at Drew's wedding in 2016. She was a bridesmaid, laughing too loud and dancing barefoot before the first round of drinks was even done. I was the guy in the back, helping the groom's car start after the battery died mid-reception. She liked that, I think, that I fixed things. She said she found it refreshing. Said her last boyfriend didn't know how to hold a screwdriver. We started talking that night, and it didn't take long before weekends turned into drawer space, then co-signed leases, then rings and promises spoken under warm string lights behind a friend's barn. Rachel worked as a paralegal at a firm downtown. Smart, efficient, organized. She liked to plan things. I liked to build them. We made it work. Moved into a small fixer-upper on Oak Ridge Street. 3 bedrooms, cracked tile, rusted pipes, and a porch that leaned left like it had given up on standing straight. I saw potential. She saw an Instagram project. Weekends became demolition and renovation. I handled the heavy lifting. New plumbing, ripped out cabinets, refinished floors. Rachel picked paint swatches, scrawled Pinterest, arranged before and after photos. She called us a renovation success story. We even made it onto a local lifestyle blog once. Mechanic meets modern muse, the headline said. I didn't care about the attention. I just liked the way she smiled when something turned out better than she expected. For a while we were good. Not perfect, not storybook, but good. We cooked dinner most nights, ate on the porch, paid down our loans. We talked about kids, someday. About maybe getting a dog first. Life felt simple, achievable. Then the differences started showing. I was raised by a single mom who taught elementary school and managed 2 kids on 1 salary. I learned early that hand-me-downs weren't shameful and backup plans weren't optional. They were survival. Rachel came from a different world. Her father, a corporate attorney. Her mother, PTA royalty. Rachel got her first car as a graduation gift. Her college tuition was covered. When we first got engaged, her dad asked me what my 5-year plan was. I said, buy a house, pay it off, stay debt-free. He nodded politely but never used my name again after that. At events, I was always Rachel's husband, like a placeholder, a detail not worth remembering. I shrugged it off, told myself I didn't need their approval. I married Rachel, not her family, but roots matter, and soil you're not welcome in will never grow something lasting. A few years in, the cracks widened. Rachel started talking about Seattle. Bigger city, more job opportunities. Her friends were moving there. I told her my work was steady, that we'd built something real here. The shop trusted me. The house was almost ours. She nodded, but her eyes drifted. She started spending weekends with new friends I never met, started coming home with shopping bags and stories I wasn't part of. Then came the small comments. Don't you ever wonder what else is out there? My roommate's husband just made partner. Sometimes I wish I'd moved to Chicago after graduation. They weren't mean, just sharp enough to pierce if I wasn't paying attention. I told myself every marriage had phases. Every couple hit turbulence. You just hold steady and ride it out. I didn't push. Didn't accuse. That's not who I am. My dad died when I was 12. Heart gave out shoveling snow. My mom finished raising me and my sister Jenna on grit and coffee. She taught me to speak less, listen more, and never react without thinking first. So when I found the business card for a Seattle apartment complex tucked inside Rachel's purse one night while looking for her keys, I didn't say a word. Just called Uncle Walter the next day and asked about updating some of our legal paperwork. Quiet steps, quiet mind. I wasn't planning to leave. I was just making sure I wouldn't be blindsided if she did. I documented our assets, made copies, stored them off-site. I wasn't suspicious. I was realistic. I saw the way she stopped asking about my day, the way she stopped using we in sentences, the way her smiles became automatic, like she was playing a part she no longer believed in. The week before my diagnosis, we had dinner together, chicken piccata. She talked about a coworker's engagement. I watched her face, wondering if she'd noticed the fear in mine. You okay? She asked eventually. I lied. Just tired. She nodded and kept eating. Didn't look up again. That should have told me everything, but I still hoped, still believed that if I just held on a little longer, we'd find our way back. That's the thing about people like me. We don't quit. Not until we're forced to. Not until we're staring at a message on a cracked phone screen that says, I didn't sign up for this. And then, even then, we don't break. We build. Because we know what it means to lose things and still keep moving. Because we've done it before. And this time, we're ready. 3 days after Rachel left, I started chemotherapy. I didn't tell anyone except Mike next door, not my boss, not Jenna, not even Walter, though he suspected. I just showed up to the hospital alone, filled out the forms, sat in the recliner they pointed to, and let the nurse hook up the IV like it was just another oil line on an engine I couldn't see. Your ride's in the waiting room? She asked. I shook my head, took an Uber. She paused. Family? My wife's out of town, I said. The words felt sour in my mouth. Not quite a lie, but nowhere near the truth. She gave me a look I couldn't quite read, something between sympathy and something harder. She patted my arm. First one's the hardest. You'll get through this. I didn't answer. I didn't trust my voice to hold. The drip started, the room spun. I stared at the ceiling like it held answers I hadn't thought to ask. When I got home, there was a casserole on my front porch. Broccoli and cheddar, still warm, with a note in Nora's handwriting that said, "Made too much." I knew that was a lie. She'd made it for me. I carried it inside and sat at the kitchen table we used to eat dinner at, 2 chairs now instead of 1. I tried to eat. Couldn't keep it down. Ended up on the bathroom floor, curled up in sweat and shame, like the world had shrunk to tile and nausea. That night I called Jenna in Portland, told her everything. The diagnosis, Rachel, the money. She wanted to drive up that night. I told her to wait. I needed to get my head right before anyone saw me like this. The next morning, I called the bank, asked for a full transaction history on our joint accounts. Vanessa, Rachel, had drained everything 40 minutes after I called her from the doctor's office. Before she even knew the details, just knew I was sick, and that was enough. Something shifted in me then. The sadness calcified, hardened into something else. Not anger, not yet, but purpose. I drove to Walter's house that afternoon with a folder full of every paper I had. Account numbers, property records, life insurance, the DMV forms I never filed for the Mustang. She can't just take all your money like that, Walter said, flipping through the statements. Joint account, I reminded him. Her name was on it too. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Cole, what she did wasn't just cold. It might have been illegal. How do we prove that? I asked. That she knew? He paused. Phone records, timestamps. If you called her right after your appointment and she made the transfer right after that? I pulled out my phone, opened the message. I didn't sign up for this, I read aloud. Walter stared at the screen. That's pretty damn telling. We spent 3 hours that day laying the groundwork. The Mustang, the land sale, my treatment costs, documenting everything, quietly, strategically. That night, I got an email from Erin, Rachel's cousin. We hadn't spoken in months. Cole, I heard what happened, she wrote. I'm so sorry. I don't know what Rachel is thinking, just wanted you to know I'm here if you need anything. I stared at her message for a long time, then typed back, Does Rachel know about my diagnosis? Her reply came quick. Yes, she told everyone, said she couldn't handle it, said she needed a fresh start. My whole family's shocked. This isn't right. I closed my laptop. I drove home with the windows down, felt the wind on my face like a reminder that I was still here, still breathing, still fighting, and for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt something like clarity, like a switch had been flipped. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't a sob story. I was a man with a diagnosis, yes, but also a man with a name, with a plan, and with nothing left to lose. Mechanics don't guess. We diagnose. We listen for sounds others can't hear, feel vibrations through steel, spot leaks from a single drop on concrete. And once we see the pattern, we don't unsee it. That's how I approached everything after the first chemo session. I didn't rage, didn't spiral. I just started looking, methodically, like I would with a misfiring engine. I already knew Rachel had moved fast, too fast. The transfer happened 40 minutes after my call. That wasn't shock, that was preparation, and I'd seen it before. Not in her words, but in her behavior. The slow detachment, the new passwords on her phone, the way she changed her gym schedule but never broke a sweat, came home glowing from workouts that weren't real. Back then I thought maybe it was stress. Maybe we were drifting. Now I knew it had been groundwork. I opened my notes app and began listing details like trouble codes, timeline of calls, receipts. What I knew, what I suspected, what I could prove. I remembered the apartment card I found in her purse months ago. Seattle address. I never brought it up, just made a mental note. Now, I cross-referenced that complex. Looked up ownership, leasing agents, dates. One unit had been rented 3 weeks before she left. Under a different name, but the emergency contact listed a number I recognized. Her college roommate from Chicago, a pattern. She'd planned the escape long before the diagnosis. I looked at our joint accounts again, not just the savings, but credit cards, utilities, even the streaming services. 2 weeks before the hospital visit, she'd removed me from several login authorizations. On paper, it meant nothing, But to someone like me, it meant preparation. It meant she knew. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was already a liability. I went to the bank to ask about our safe deposit box, the one we'd opened 2 years ago to store the Mustang title and the deed to my grandfather's land. The teller looked hesitant. There was an attempt to access it last week, she said, but the second key wasn't presented. We didn't allow it. Name of the person who tried? I asked. She glanced at the screen. Rachel Turner. She said it without emotion, but it landed like a hammer. I thanked her and walked out, sat in my truck, took a breath. One key. My key. Still in my pocket. That night, I drove to Walter's house again, laid everything out. The access attempt, the Seattle lease, the credit card changes. She's getting sloppy, Walter said, pouring us both coffee. She thinks you're too sick to fight. She's not entirely wrong, I admitted. Some days I feel like I'm running on fumes. Then we fight smart, he said, not loud. We spent the next 3 hours mapping contingencies. Walter called his former partner, a real estate attorney named Clara Yoon, and briefed her on the land, the title changes I never filed, the Mustang. We need to move now, he said, while you still have control. I took the next morning off, went to the DMV, filed the Mustang title, solo ownership, notarized, sealed, done. Then I closed the safe deposit box, moved everything to a new one under my name only. It felt strange, untethering all the things I'd once willingly shared, but it also felt like air rushing back into collapsed lungs. That evening I got a text, new number, no name. You changed the Mustang title? That car is half mine. I stared at the screen. She knew I'd filed it that morning. She'd already found out, which meant someone was feeding her information, at the DMV or the bank. I called Walter. I think she has help. Her father's well-connected, he said. Corporate law firm. They've got eyes everywhere. What do we do? Feed them false moves, he said. Let's see how fast she bites. The next day, I made 2 very intentional phone calls. The first was to the agent handling my grandfather's land sale. I asked her to pause the process, said I was exploring other options for liquidating assets due to medical bills. I said it loud enough for the receptionist to overhear. The second was to my old investment firm. I inquired about early withdrawal on a small 401k I'd left untouched. No reason, just curiosity. 2 days later, a new letter arrived from Rachel's lawyer, demanding half of any proceeds from the sale of inherited property and a fair division of all retirement accounts. Walter laughed when I showed him. She took the bait, he said. Now we show our hand. Not yet, I thought. I wasn't done gathering. I wanted her to keep thinking I was reacting, desperate, panicked, predictable. Because people who think they're ahead don't look behind them. But I was there, quiet, focused, watching every leak in the line. There's something oddly satisfying about lining up lies until they collapse on themselves. That's what Walter and I started doing after Rachel took the bait. Every bank statement, every transfer, every timestamp. It all went into a folder we labeled containment. Not revenge, not yet. Just facts. Just containment. Walter brought in Clara Yoon, his old real estate partner, to help us draw the legal map. She was sharp, quiet, and efficient, asked questions like a surgeon, quick, precise, and with a scalpel's edge. When did she move the money? She asked. 40 minutes after my diagnosis, I said. And when did she send the text? I showed her. Same day. Clara raised an eyebrow. That's not just abandonment. That's premeditated financial exit. Combined with a known medical event, that's going to land differently in court. She also tried to access the safe deposit box, I added. Failed. Only I had the key. Perfect, Clara said. Means she acted knowing she lacked authority. We cross-referenced the transfers with my medical records, matched the date of the biopsy with the call log to Rachel, then overlaid it with the financial activity. Clara's assistant built a timeline with color-coded highlights. It looked like a war plan. In a way, it was. Next, we dug into where the money went. Walter subpoenaed records through a quiet contact at the bank. Turns out, Rachel hadn't just moved the money into a new account. She'd written a cashier's check, $30,000, to her parents, Howard Latham, attorney, the same man who once called me that mechanic, to a room full of golf buddies. Clara's face tightened when she saw the name. They're trying to hide the money, layering assets. Can they do that? I asked. Not if it's traced back to joint funds, she said, especially not when one party's in active medical crisis. I stared at the paper. She's laundering it through her parents? Walter nodded. Poorly, which works in our favor. I leaned back in the chair. My whole life was now ink and paper and signatures. But this wasn't theoretical. This was real. This was the money I was supposed to use to survive, to pay for nausea meds and hospital stays, and the chance to see another winter. Rachel didn't just run, she ran with everything. And she thought I'd let her. She thought I'd fold. Walter put a hand on my arm. "You okay?" I nodded. "I'm tired, but I'm not broken." That night, I got a message from Aaron again. "Cole, just a heads up. Rachel told the family you froze the accounts to punish her. She's spitting this fast. Says you're trying to leave her with nothing." I read it 3 times. "Did she tell them about the money she already took?" "No," Aaron replied, "but I did." I smiled. "A small one. Just for me. There are people who disappear when things fall apart, and there are people who show up with a flashlight and gloves. Aaron was the second kind. I filed away that detail. Not all bridges burn, some become shortcuts. A few days later, Rachel's lawyer sent a new letter. She wanted a divorce, cited irreconcilable differences, wanted to be removed from the mortgage, but still wanted half the equity in the house. No mention of the $38,000. No mention of the land, no mention of my diagnosis. Clara read the letter twice. She's pretending the money doesn't exist. "What's the move?" I asked. "Let them talk first," Clara said. "Then we'll shut it down." Walter grinned, like boxing. Let the other guy throw until he's tired, then counter. I looked at the papers again. My name, her name. 2 people who used to be one team. Now, 2 opposing sides in a quiet war. Rachel had no idea I'd kept records, that I'd digitized everything, that I had the original copy of our wedding prenup, signed, scanned, and tucked inside my firewall-protected drive. She didn't know that the Mustang paperwork had never been finalized, or that I'd registered the land solely under my name at Walter's insistence. "Trust is beautiful," he'd once said, "but keep a copy of the deed anyway." Now those quiet moves, those backup plans built from growing up with not much, were saving me. I didn't tell Jenna everything. Not yet. She was checking on me every other day, driving up when she could, stocking the freezer, making me laugh when I couldn't find a reason to smile. I didn't want to burden her with legal jargon. All she needed to know was that I wasn't letting Rachel get away with it. Not this time. Not like this. The chemo sessions kept coming. Some days I couldn't walk without leaning against the wall. Some days my hands trembled too much to hold a wrench. But every morning I opened my laptop, reviewed timelines, tracked movement, stayed in the game. Because this wasn't about revenge. It was about restoration. About claiming what was mine, what I'd earned. Not with threats, but with proof. Cold, clean, and undeniable. The trick was giving her something she couldn't resist. Walter called it strategic exposure. Just enough truth to make the lie look real. I called my realtor again, this time on speaker with Clara listening in. I made sure to say, "I'm thinking about liquidating the land to cover medical costs. Might move the money fast." The realtor hesitated, then said, "I'll prep the docs, just say the word." I never said the word. I ended the call, closed the laptop, and waited. 2 days later, a letter arrived from Rachel's lawyer. This one more aggressive. It demanded half of any proceeds from inherited property and requested transparency regarding all liquidated or pending liquid assets. Clara read it and smiled. "She bit," she said. "Hook, line, and greed." We flagged the timing. It was less than 48 hours after the staged call, which meant someone was feeding her information again or she was watching me through someone else. Probably both. I told Clara about the text Rachel had sent after I filed the Mustang title, the one claiming that car is half mine. "She's tracking you in real time," Clara said, "which means she's either confident or panicking." "My bet's on both," I replied. That afternoon I received another text, different number, but I knew the tone. "You're playing games, Cole. This isn't you." I didn't reply. The game wasn't mine, it was hers. I just learned how to play it better. Walter looped in a private investigator he trusted, an old contact from an insurance fraud case. In under a week, he sent back a report. Rachel had been spotted at a real estate office on the north side. The agent? Daniel Spencer, a name I'd never heard, but Clara had. "He's known for fast, under-market sales," she said, "specializes in transfers before divorces finalize. Slippery guy." The investigator pulled bank records, public enough if you knew where to look. There it was, a $7,500 0-cent deposit from Rachel's account into Spencer's escrow fund. The date? 1 week after our fake phone call about the land. Clara leaned forward. She's trying to sell behind your back. Probably thinks you won't contest it if she moves fast. I stared at the number. 7,000 wasn't a down payment, it was a signal. That's the opener, I said. She's starting the process. Exactly, Clara nodded. If we wait, they'll accelerate, but if we hit now... It looks like panic, I finished. Walter stood from the table. Let's push it further. We did. We planted one more call, this time to the investment account that still had $11.00 from my old employer. I asked about full liquidation due to severe financial strain. Clara made sure the line was monitored, and then we waited. 3 days later, Rachel's lawyer sent a final demand: full audit of inherited and retirement assets, immediate mediation, and temporary protection of proceeds until equitable distribution is agreed upon. Clara's laugh was short and sharp. They think you're bleeding out. Perfect. That night, Aaron messaged me again. Cole, just a heads up. Rachel told her parents you're trying to hide assets. She's planning to move quickly on something. Didn't say what. Her dad's getting involved. I replied, thanks, Aaron. Stay out of it from here. It's about to turn. At dawn the next morning, Clara filed our countermession, allegations of financial concealment, medical abandonment, and fraudulent presale of shared assets. She attached the timeline, the bank screenshots, Rachel's text, I didn't sign up for this, and the money trail to her parents. We just locked the board, Clara said. Now let's see if they know how to play chess. That afternoon, I got a voicemail from Rachel. No anger this time, just a soft voice. Cole, can we talk? I think we've both done things we regret. Maybe we could meet, just talk. I played it twice, then deleted it. The next day, Spencer and Rachel were seen entering the county registrar's office, filing intent to sell. Walter's investigator caught it on camera. And so, just like that, we had everything. Timing, motive, financial trail, and attempted asset separation during active illness. Clara filed the final set of documents under emergency petition. This time, it wasn't just about divorce. It was about accountability. Rachel had taken the bait. She thought she was chasing my desperation, but all she'd caught was my preparation. Monday morning came gray and quiet, the kind of day Spokane does best. Muted skies, cold light through half-open blinds. I arrived at Clara's office 15 minutes early. Walter was already there, sipping coffee with the same composure he had when giving bad news to clients back in his prime. Clara looked up from the conference table. You ready? I nodded. What do I say? Nothing, she said. You sit, you breathe. You let the facts speak for you. At 9:02, Rachel walked in. She looked put together. New coat, fresh nails, that same polished distance she wore when we used to argue but never raised voices. Her lawyer, a tall man with rectangular glasses and no soul in his eyes, pulled out a leather portfolio with theatrical precision. Behind them, of course, was Howard, her father, still in his usual blue-gray suit, still calling me the mechanic behind closed doors. None of them looked at me directly when they sat down. That told me everything. Clara opened the meeting. Before we proceed, I want to state for the record that this is a courtesy discussion. Our client, Mr. Turner, is under no obligation to negotiate. However, he is open to resolution, provided it reflects the facts of this case and the impact of the actions already taken. Rachel's lawyer shifted. We believe there's been a misunderstanding? Clara didn't blink. No misunderstanding. Let's walk through the timeline, shall we? She pulled out 3 documents. The bank statement showing the withdrawal within 40 minutes of my cancer diagnosis, the screenshot of Rachel's text, and the cashier's check to her father's trust account. Our client had just received life-altering medical news when his spouse removed the entirety of their joint savings, attempted to access secure property, and began preparations to liquidate inherited land assets not yet divided. Rachel flinched. Her father narrowed his eyes. Her lawyer cleared his throat. We don't dispute the timing, but my client acted under emotional distress. She had no legal intent to commit fraud. Clara's smile was sharp. And yet, she also filed for divorce within the same time frame, requested asset protection on items she didn't own, and listed a real estate agent with a known history of disputed filings. That strategy, I didn't say a word. I didn't look at Rachel. I just watched her lawyer start to sweat. We're willing to settle, he said finally. Avoid a long process. You'll return the $38,000, 0 cents in full, Clara replied. Relinquish all claims to the Mustang, the house equity, and the Sandpoint land. You'll sign over all rights with no further demands. In exchange, Mr. Turner won't pursue criminal charges for attempted concealment and financial exploitation during medical vulnerability. Silence. Rachel's father spoke next. That's excessive, vindictive. Clara opened the folder again. We have the check trail, the escrow deposit, the property listing attempts, the statement from Megan confirming your daughter knew of Mr. Turner's illness when she fled. We have screenshots, witnesses, timelines. She leaned forward, voice low and deadly. You don't want this going to court. Rachel finally spoke. Her voice was tight. I just want to move on. I didn't mean for any of this to spiral. I could have said something then. Could have pointed out that things don't spiral unless someone spins them. But I didn't. I just stared at the table, let the weight of what she'd done settle between us like oil on water. Her lawyer folded his hands. Give us 48 hours to respond. You've got 24, Clara said. After that, we file everything. The meeting ended. I stood, walked out first. Didn't look back. In the elevator, Walter exhaled slowly. You didn't say a word, he said. Didn't have to, I replied. Because sometimes, the most powerful move is to sit still while the truth burns everything down around them. It didn't take 24 hours. They folded in 18. Clara got the call just after 7 a.m. the next morning. Rachel's lawyer wanted to resolve the matter swiftly and quietly. Translation: they'd read the documents again overnight and realized just how deep the water was. Clara didn't even look surprised. We'll draft the final agreement, she said, already typing. Let them know it's take it or leave it, no edits, no soft language. We don't negotiate with cowards who abandon cancer patients. I just nodded. There wasn't much left to say. That afternoon we met again. Same room, same table, very different air. Rachel looked smaller this time, not physically, but less composed. Her coat was wrinkled, her hands kept folding into each other like she didn't know what to do with them. Howard was silent, his eyes bloodshot. I think he knew the fight was over before he even walked in. Clara slid the folder across the table. These are the terms. They reflect Mr. Turner's right to recover what was taken, protect his assets, and walk forward unburdened by deception. Rachel's lawyer read silently, jaw tightening with every page. No one spoke. I watched Rachel the whole time, not out of anger, but curiosity. I wanted to see if she'd show remorse. She didn't. Only fear. When he reached the final page, the lawyer cleared his throat. We accept the terms, Clara nodded. Payment is due within 30 days. Documents must be signed today. Rachel reached for the pen, hand shaking slightly. I half expected her father to stop her, to puff up one last time and call it extortion. But he just stared at the wall behind me, silent, defeated. One signature, then another. It was done. Clara collected the papers, stacked them like evidence from a trial that never had to happen. You'll receive a copy this afternoon. Rachel stood slowly. Cole. Her voice was soft, weak. I never wanted it to end like this. I finally looked at her, eyes steady. You made sure it did. She flinched. A real one. No drama, just truth, landing where excuses used to live. I walked out, didn't look back. In the elevator, Walter said nothing. He didn't need to. The silence was enough. That night, I stood on my porch with a glass of water, watching the last of the October sun bleed into the pine tree. Jenna texted, "How'd it go?" I replied, "It's over." She sent a heart emoji, then, "Proud of you." I stared at those words for a long time, not because I needed validation, but because I realized something. No one else would ever get to claim my strength again. Rachel saw love as leverage. Her father saw marriage as a transaction. They thought I was the easiest mark in the world. A mechanic with a cancer diagnosis, alone, tired, vulnerable. But I wasn't a victim. I was a system running quiet diagnostics in the background, watching, logging, preparing. And when the time came, I didn't explode. I executed, soft, clean, precise. The next day, the cashier's check arrived, $38,000, 0 cents. Clara delivered it herself. Deposited it into your medical account already, she said. Hospital's getting a call from me this afternoon. We'll clear what we can. I nodded. Thanks. She paused at the door. You did good, Cole. You didn't just survive, you won. I watched her leave, then sat at the kitchen table, where Rachel once laughed over wine, once called us a renovation success story. The room was quieter now, but cleaner, like the weight was finally gone. The collapse had begun the day she walked out, but the rebuild started the moment I didn't. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks later. Clara sent the documents over with a single line in the email: file closed, life open. I stared at the words for a long time before signing. Not because I had doubts, but because I didn't. No hesitation, no flicker of second thoughts. It was done. Legally. Emotionally, it had been over since the morning I sat in a chemo chair alone while she emptied our account. Rachel didn't show up to sign. Her lawyer handled everything. I didn't ask. I didn't care. Clara couriered a copy for my records. I tucked it into a drawer I planned to never open again. That week, I drove to the hospital and paid down my medical bills in full. Julia, the nurse who'd been with me since session 1, was at the counter. "You're early today," she said. "No appointment until Friday." I handed her the check. She looked down, then back up at me. "Insurance came through?" I shook my head. "Something like that." She smiled, softer than usual. "You're doing better." "I'm still here," I said. That counts for something. The word remission hadn't been spoken yet, but the scans looked promising, my numbers were improving, and the nausea didn't cling to my bones the way it used to. Jenna came up that weekend. I brought a box of old family photos and a bottle of sparkling cider. "You're officially debt-free, legally free, and maybe even cancer-free," she said, raising a glass. "That's a hell of a restart," I nodded. "It's quiet. I didn't think it would feel like this." "Like what?" "Like I'm not angry anymore," I said, "just tired and done." She didn't push, just smiled, then handed me a folder. "These are the property docs Walter sent over. The land sale in Sandpoint closes next month. $61,000, 0 cents net. That's your cushion." I nodded. I already knew where it was going. Somewhere new, somewhere quieter, somewhere not poisoned by memories I never asked to carry. That Monday, I drove to the house on Mason Street one last time. Packed what little I hadn't touched in months, left the casserole dish on the porch with a note for Nora and Mike. "Thank you for everything." Then I walked through the house slowly. Touched the window frame I'd repaired myself, the corner where the dog used to sleep, the wall where we marked paint samples but never painted anything at all. I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant either, just ready. As I pulled out of the driveway, a text lit up my phone. Unknown number. But I didn't need to check the ID. I knew the rhythm of her words. I heard the divorce is final. "I hope you're okay. I think about you. I'm sorry." I read it once, then typed back 4 words. "You lost, I lived." Then I blocked the number and kept driving. 3 weeks after the divorce finalized, I loaded everything I owned into the back of a borrowed trailer and pointed my truck toward Montana. Jenna cried at the state line. I didn't. I just kept driving. The cabin was everything the photos promised. Small, quiet, backed against a wall of pines that swallowed sound. 2 bedrooms, a wood-burning stove, a detached garage with cracked concrete, and enough room for a lift I didn't own yet. It was perfect. No one here knew my name. No one looked twice when I bought lumber at the hardware store or ordered black coffee at the corner diner. I wasn't the guy with cancer. I wasn't the husband who got left. I was just Cole, the new guy who fixed carburetors and didn't talk much. That suited me fine. The first thing I unpacked was the Mustang. Parked it in the garage like it belonged there. Opened the hood, checked the battery, ran my hand along the fender like greeting an old friend. I didn't plan to sell it anymore. I didn't need the money. I needed the memory, not of her, not of the past, but of what it meant to build something with my hands that still ran, still responded, still roared when asked. I spent the next few weeks setting up the garage, wiring new lights, building shelves, welding a workbench from scrap steel I found behind a shuttered feed store. My tools found their places again. So did I. The town didn't ask questions. Joel, my old buddy who ran the custom auto shop nearby, dropped by once a week with odd jobs and beer. "You're still quiet," he said once, "but you don't look haunted anymore." I just nodded. There wasn't much to say. He got it. Some people bleed out loud, others rebuild in silence. I was the second kind. My phone stayed off most of the time. Clara sent an email once, confirming the final installment from the land sale had cleared. Jenna texted photos of her kids with greasy hands trying to fix a lawnmower, Uncle Cole style. That made me smile. Rachel never reached out again. Neither did her father. I assumed they were somewhere, still justifying the story in their heads, still believing they were the victims of something they created. I didn't care. I didn't need closure. I had peace. One morning, I got a letter from Spokane General. Inside was a card, handwritten in neat, rounded script. You may not remember me, but I was the nurse who checked you in on your first chemo session. I saw you come in alone. I saw how still you sat. I wanted you to know. You inspired me. I quit that job 3 months later and started hospice training. Because of you, because sometimes the quiet ones are the ones who teach the most. I read it 3 times. Then pinned it to the garage wall next to the fuse box. Not because I needed the praise, but because it reminded me. Even at your lowest, someone's watching how you carry it. I spent the rest of that day rebuilding the timing chain on the Mustang. Hands greasy, shirt soaked, music low, no noise in my head, no ghosts in my ribs, just the clean rhythm of gears and breath and time. The past didn't own me, the sickness didn't define me, and the woman who ran, she never broke me. She just showed me who I'd become when left with nothing but myself. And I liked that man better. Sometimes we imagine that healing must be loud, that it comes in grand gestures, big victories, dramatic finishes where justice is served and the people who wronged us fall to their knees. But the truth is, healing often doesn't look like that at all. It's not a courtroom slam or a headline moment. Most of the time it looks like small choices. Quiet mornings. The first time you wake up and don't feel dread in your chest. The first time your hands don't shake when you touch something you used to love. The first breath you take where your past doesn't climb into your throat and choke it. Cole didn't win because he humiliated anyone. He didn't win because someone paid him back. He didn't win because he walked away with more money or less debt. He won because he reclaimed himself. And that is the kind of victory most people overlook. There are people walking around today who carry betrayals no one sees. People who were left when they were sick. People who were abandoned emotionally long before anyone walked out the door. People who weren't hurt by strangers, but by those who once held their hand and said, "I'm with you." And when you've been that person, when the thing that broke you was personal, you learn something that others don't. You learn the difference between survival and bitterness. Because it's easy to become bitter. Bitterness is loud and fast and looks like strength, but it's not. It's just pain pretending to have purpose. Healing, real healing, is quieter. It happens under your skin, in the moments you don't post, in the choices no one claps for. When you take your hands off the wreckage and start building something new, not to prove anything, but because you're ready to live again. One gear at a time. One nail, one sunrise, one kind word at a time. We live in a world that glorifies revenge and spectacle. But there's something far more powerful than getting even. It's getting free. Not just from the person who hurt you, but from the version of yourself that was shaped by their absence. From the self-doubt, the silence, the fear of trusting again. Cole didn't burn bridges. He didn't scream. He just walked. Carefully, clearly, with his back straight and his eyes forward. And in doing so, he taught us something far more important than how to catch a liar. He showed us how to catch ourselves before we become like them. That is strength, that is maturity, and that is something no one can take from you. So if you're out there tonight, watching this and thinking about the betrayal you've swallowed in silence, or the grief no one ever saw, maybe this is your permission, not to get even, but to get up, to rebuild, without needing permission, to trust that what's waiting for you on the other side of this pain is not just peace, but power. Not just justice, but joy. And not because the world will hand it to you, but because you will build it, one gear at a time. If this story stirred something in you, if it reminded you that strength can look like stillness, and that peace is sometimes the quiet victory no one sees, then maybe you belong here. We tell stories like this not for revenge, but for release, for reflection, for anyone who's ever rebuilt quietly and chosen grace over noise. Subscribe if you'd like to hear more. No pressure. Just presence.